We are back. We are here. We are talking about the paranormal. It's Spooky South Coast returning after having last week off for Salem Con. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Boggy Creek monster. We're going to go beyond Boggy Creek, but we're also going to start at Boggy Creek before we go beyond Boggy Creek with our guest tonight, Lyle Blackburn. We'll be very excited to talk to him about these monster stories, and we'll also take your calls as well. We'll be talking about all kinds of things paranormal because that's what we do here on episode 495 of Spooky South Coast, which is starting right now. Science advisor Matt Moniz and Stephanie Burke. The gang is all here for the first time in a while.
Yeah.
And definitely for the first time in a couple of weeks because we were off last week for Salem Con. And I just realized Matt has this new setup. I can't ask him about Sonic and stuff.
I know.
You know,
I don't think I like this. I think he did it on purpose.
Oh, I say he's going to come over here and jump on the microphone and talk about Sonic? No? Okay.
No, he's just fixing cameras.
Not yet. No Sonic yet. We're just gonna give like a weekly update as to whether or not Sonic is in Wareham yet. I don't even have to do that because you will know.
Will I?
The viewers on Spooky TV at SpookySouthCoast.com will know because they will see many shakes in front of us as the show begins.
I'm game for shakes, my friend.
So we will definitely get into that when it happens. But until then, we'll talk about the paranormal for the most part. And as I said, tonight our guest is going to be Lyle Blackburn. His new book is called Beyond Boggy Creek, In Search of the Southern Sasquatch. But we'll also talk to him about his first book as well, The Beast of Boggy Creek. We're going to find out more about this legend. It's something that I don't think we've ever covered here on the show in all the years of talking about different cryptid stories. And there's actually one of the Small Town Monsters documentaries is actually about this too, so we can get into all of that stuff coming up in just a little bit with Lyle. But before that, we just want to give a quick recap of Salem Con. I thought it was a great weekend overall.
It was. I had fun.
It was your first time going.
It was my first time.
And you weren't sure exactly what to expect?
No, not at all. Salem is one of my favorite places on this planet. I absolutely love going. Any excuse to go is awesome, but it was definitely interesting being there and seeing everything go down. I've heard about it for so many years, and I didn't think I'd ever see it happen, but I did.
And the rumors are that it was the last Salem Con, but we are working on pushing Mark and Lauren for doing another one.
I did see their live video yesterday.
What did they say in that one?
They did say that they have reasons to not do it and reasons to obviously want to do it. Mm-hmm. And they just don't know if they want to go through everything again to do it. But I think they're going to end up changing their minds.
I know the reasons why they don't want to do it.
Of course.
And it's a big hurdle to be able to jump over. But if they can, then I see no reason why it can't be done.
No, I think everybody had a great time. Everybody was so happy in just having fun and letting loose and, just forgetting about the things that go on every day.
And I want to welcome all of the new listeners, people who are checking out the show for the first time, people that we talked. There were some people who had never experienced anything to do with the paranormal until that weekend. So we welcome you aboard, and hopefully you'll keep joining us each and every Saturday night. And we do have another event coming up as well.
We do.
That we'll be at in a few. Well, you'll be at one next weekend.
I will be at one next weekend. I'll be at...
We're just getting all the plug stuff out of the way really fast so we can get into the conversation.
I will be on the Strange Escape Spiritual Retreat weekend with Amy Broody, Adam Berry, Dustin Perry, and Ty Gowen. And I'm really excited about it. I've never been to Mount Washington.
I think there's still some tickets available for that too, isn't there?
I think so.
So if people want to get involved, they can go to strange-escapes.com.
Right, absolutely.
Don't forget the dash.
Check that out. I'll be doing readings all weekend. You can buy those on the website as well. And it's an action-packed weekend from Friday to Monday morning, and you get so many different things along with it. And it's only limited to 30 people.
Wow, only 30 people.
Only 30 people, and I've heard the investigation spots are pretty serious. So
and I saw some mention of something earlier that you might be doing.
Something earlier.
Earlier today I saw something that you might be doing while you're up there.
Oh, God.
Something that
Yes.
you're afraid of.
I'm terrified. The Cog Railway.
I saw that on a PBS documentary.
Yes.
About a year or so ago. And I said, oh, man, I would love to do that, but I'm never going to do that.
Really?
Like, I'm just too afraid of heights.
I'm terrified of heights. And I felt bad saying no because the nerdy part of me is like, when am I ever going to get this experience again?
Right.
Going up to the top of Mount Washington.
I think the Cog Railroad is the only one left like that.
Being able to be at the summit and see the observatory and everything, the nerd in me is
Well,
completely...
you could just drive up there. You don't have to take the Cog.
I am never driving up there. That's not happening.
No, there's like just a road.
Nope.
Like you can
Not
just drive
happening.
up the road. But
No.
You don't have to take the Cog to get up there.
Please contact Alicia and tell her how well I did in the Berkshires.
Well,
And she will tell you I am not driving up Mount Washington.
but you don't even have to drive
Nope.
on any mountains when you're
Nope.
in the Berkshires.
Oh, no, I ended up on one.
Well,
I told you that whole story. I
you
ended
went
up on the
the wrong way.
Mohawk Trail.
You went the wrong way.
I know. My GPS took me that way. So I don't like heights. I can't do it. So I just feel like
Mount,
if
Mount
I...
Greylock's nothing compared to Mount Washington either.
No, I know.
No, I'm terrified.
If you had a problem with that, you're screwed.
I am terrified. So I'm hoping... I talked to Alicia about it and I told her, worst case scenario, I have a complete panic attack before my lecture, and it is what it is. So I'll just have to figure it out. But I'm hoping it's going to be a good time.
Well, then the weekend after that, you'll be back with me. We'll be causing some trouble again in Provincetown.
Yes.
At the Provincetown Paracon, the first ever Provincetown Paracon, May 12th to the 14th. Tickets are still available. You can hang out with Amy Bruni, Adam Berry, us, John
Yes.
Brightman, Greg and Dana Newkirk.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Sam Baltrusas is hosting the whole event.
Right.
And I know Lucky will be there, Lucky Bel Camino. There's going to be so many people that'll be there.
Right.
It's worth coming and checking out. Anyway, and they just announced that they're going to have the True Crime Tour. What's that, on Saturday?
No, that's Friday night after the VIP party.
I'm getting my days confused.
Yes.
So, yes, after the VIP party, you can go on that special tour with Rachel Hoffman and Sam Baltrusas to investigate some of the true crime stories of Provincetown. That was just announced. So you can check all that out on the website, provincetownparacon.com. But we are going to be giving away some passes
We are.
to Provincetown Paracon.
And can I just say how cool it is that we're actually lecturing together for that one?
Right. And by lecturing together, I mean I'm making you do all the work.
Oh, I'm sure. Do we want to let people know what we're lecturing about? Or are we totally going
we-
surprise mode?
Are we totally sure what we're lecturing about yet?
I don't know. Are we?
We have an idea.
Okay.
So you're not going to want to miss this. It's going to be, I'm just going to pimp it up really big and then see if we can fail to deliver. It's going to be huge.
You never do, my
I
friend.
sound like the president.
Right.
So
Huge.
it's going to be amazing. You're going to love it. It's going to be the best lecture anybody's ever had.
Never been done before.
That's for sure. So, but definitely make sure that you come and check us out. We'll be giving away those passes at the end of the show. And Sam's been nice enough to give us more passes to give away.
Right.
So we're going to give some away on the show this week. We'll give some away on the show next week. And then during the week, Stephanie and I will also be giving some away on our social media as well.
Okay.
So I have a plan in place of how we can do that. And I'll talk to you about that after the show.
Sounds good.
But you want to definitely stay focused on us on Twitter and on Facebook, and we will give you your chances to win. We're not we're going to do some on the spooky, some on our personal. We're going to kind of mix it around because we've got a good couple of pairs to give away. So
absolutely. And
we'll make sure that we do it.
So this is only for the Saturday lecture
Just
part.
the Saturday lecture part. But the good news is if you win them and you want to take part in the other stuff, there's still time to get involved.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And to be able to sign up for the VIP party, the true crime tour, the investigations.
From what I know, too, as of right now, it's on flash sale. Right? The whole VIP access for the whole weekend, minus the dinner on Saturday and the true crime tour. But everything else right now is on flash sale. So if you go to provincetownparacon.com, you'll be able to take advantage of this awesome, awesome deal.
And make sure that you follow Provincetown Paracon on Facebook.
Yes.
Because that's where these deals keep popping up if you want to have your chance to get some reduced tickets. But as I said, we will have some freebies for you a little bit later on tonight. And I don't think we're going to do any heavy lifting to give them away tonight. I think it'll just be after the show's over. We'll just take a certain caller or something. But maybe there'll be a trivia question that pops up from tonight's show.
I gotta come up with one.
You got to pay attention to the topic and what we're discussing tonight, and that will be the easiest way to be able to win. We're not going to make you give us a brand new theory of what ghosts are just to win these tickets.
No, the last question was really funny.
We're just going to ask you something about the discussion that happens during the course of tonight's show. So make sure that you pay attention, take notes, and you have your chance to win a little bit later on. So
perfect.
Excuse me. See, I'm going to try and pull away as much as I can before I cough, but this is killing me now. It's like each Each week something else happens to destroy my throat.
Well, it's because you're on the radio every day now.
It was being sick. Then
Yep.
then I finally started getting over that. The hot wings problem started.
That was a pretty serious problem.
Yes, it was. The hot wings was not. Did you see the hot wing video, Moniz?
I saw stills of
Oh,
it.
it was
No,
hilarious.
there's a video.
It's so funny. You have to see it.
If anybody out there has not seen the video, I shared it, but you can go to fun107.com and you'll see it there. Basically, we took four of the hottest wings on the South Coast. There was 3 of us participating in the challenge, so we each had to eat 1 wing from 4 places, each of their hottest wings. So we had 1 from Buffalo Wild Wings. We had 1 from the Cask and Pig, which just opened up in Dartmouth. We had their Carolina Reaper wing. We had 1 from
Barrett's
Ale House, and we had 1 from Rose Alley. And the Barrett's Ale House Ghost Pepper wings was the one that actually destroyed us.
Okay.
To the point, like, physical pain.
Can I just tell you that my favorite part of the entire video is the fact that Nick just sat there and totally ate everything without even flinching and just continued to eat it after you guys were coughing and puking.
Nick Dompierre, who is a world-famous skateboarder, is also a now world-famous food challenge person. Like, he goes out and takes all these food challenges. Sometimes he just creates food challenges where one doesn't exist. Sometimes he just walks into a restaurant and says, I'm going to eat 30 tacos tonight. And as Gazelle likes to say, he has an 8-pack. I mean, this kid is like jacked, and he can eat anything. And we're eating these wings, and after we eat the hottest wing, Gazelle threw up. He's literally vomiting in the trash barrel. Mm-hmm. I'm in the bathroom just scooping cold water into my mouth to rinse out all the spices from my mouth. So we're going through all this pain. We walk back into the conference room. Nick's in there just eating the rest of the wings.
Okay.
And he still hadn't even touched his milk that we had poured out for him. He actually ended up just drinking the milk at the end, just because he felt bad that it was going to go to waste because we'd already poured it. That was the only reason why he drank it. He didn't need it.
It was such a funny video.
Well, we did do a pepper challenge.
That's all I could keep thinking back to.
That stuff was hot.
Listen, Jay Morey, we love you, but these wings were hotter than your sauce.
Wow.
Yes, it was that bad. So we're gonna see if Matt, if he's not too busy, if he can get our guest on the phone, Lyle Blackburn, and we will be talking about his book Beyond Boggy Creek. If you want to check out his website, it's lyleblackburn.com. That's Lyle, and then Blackburn, Blackburn. I wonder if he has a hot sauce. Blackburns.
That would be pretty good.
That'd be a good idea. But we'll be talking with him in just a moment. And again, if you have any questions during the show, 508-996-0500, 877-996-1420. If you want to call in, you can. If you want to type questions into the chat room, you can do that as well. We have the chat room going live on our YouTube channel. We have the Facebook Live going tonight on the Spooky South Coast page. I know a lot of you usually tune in to watch Stephanie because you like the fact that
yes,
her camera is on her all the time, and I think she might like that a little bit too.
Oh yes, I am. I'm so into myself, I can't even stand it.
And so, but Matt's found a way to actually kick the Spooky TV feed,
which is awesome,
directly into the Facebook Live.
Can we just talk about how amazing he is and how we wouldn't be doing this without him?
He is incredible. You should have seen what he did. We had the live debate last week for the Ward 3 candidates here in New Bedford, and the production that he put on was spectacular. Everybody in the building was buzzing about it for days afterwards. And that's, it was a little small election.
Right.
And I'm saying, guys, Matt's been doing this every Saturday night for years. Like, you're just discovering now how awesome he is. Like, we've known this forever.
He is. So big thanks to him, because all this techie, amazing things would not be happening if it weren't for him.
And everybody was, like I said, everybody was buzzing about it, and I just kept saying the same thing when they're like, "How does he do all this? How did he figure this out?" I was like,
because he's a genius.
Does nobody in this building ever watch Spooky TV?
No, but they need to.
Like, nobody ever watches it.
Abby watches.
Frank the engineer watches it just to see if we've been playing with his cameras, and the answer is we have. But yes, Abby does watch it. Abby actually told me that she had to go to a regional meeting for everybody that's in her position, and the whole trip, all she did was listen to Spooky South Coast podcast.
That's because she's awesome.
And she keeps begging to come in. I tell her anytime. It's not like she doesn't have a key to the place.
I know. she should definitely come on. We can talk all kinds of different ghost things.
And tonight would have been a great night for her because she's really into, cryptid stuff.
Oh, really?
She likes puckwudgies a lot.
Well, who doesn't?
But I think tonight she would definitely be on board for what we're discussing tonight, because we have joining us now on the line, Lyle Blackburn is an author, a musician, and cryptid researcher from Texas. His acclaimed books such as Beast of Boggy Creek, Beyond Boggy Creek, and Lizard Man reflect his lifelong fascination with legends and sighting reports of unknown creatures. Lyle's also a staff writer for the monthly horror magazine Rue Morgue, founder of the rock band Ghoultown, and narrator-producer of the Small Town Monsters film series. He's been heard on numerous radio programs, including Coast to Coast AM, and he's appeared on various television shows airing on Discovery, Animal Planet, Destination America, A&E, HGTV, and CBS, and served as consulting producer and special episode host for the TV show Monsters and Mysteries in America. And most recently, Lyle was featured in the Small Town Monsters documentary, Boggy Creek Monster, and we welcome him to the show. Good evening, Lyle. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about that bio? It's getting longer.
Hey, that's good though. It means that you're it's always good to have your bio grow than have it shrink. It means you're still doing stuff, still making a difference.
That's right. Yeah,
so,
definitely.
I just as we're reading your bio, and I just want to take a minute again, and I know that we had Seth on just a few weeks ago, and we want to say congratulations to Seth Breedlove and his family. They have a new addition to the family. I don't know if you were aware of that, Lyle.
Oh, certainly so. Yes, yeah. Congratulations to Seth, and he was a busy guy before, so now he's even busier, but in a good way. I
just want to know which of the monsters he picked to be the godfather of the child. Is it Bigfoot? I think it might be Mothman right now. That might be in the running.
It could be. It could be up for bid. The highest bidder will pursue the next documentary. So who knows?
So, I mean, we mentioned that you have quite a lengthy bio, and I'm going to assume that this is something that, you didn't set out to get involved in your life, as most of us that end up in these pursuits do. It's something that just ends up calling us along the way. We're going to be talking about Boggy Creek tonight, which I think it's a monster story that I think affected a lot of people when they were younger, and that kind of made them aware of these creatures. How did you first become aware of the idea of there being these cryptid creatures that people just weren't paying enough attention to?
Well, from a very young age, I was early into Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, that sort of thing, mostly through books. I think I saw the Patterson-Gimlin Bigfoot film on television, and it's just something that attracted me because I was naturally into movie monsters and all things creepy and crawly. So as I kind of progressed through life, those stood out because, the fact that they could possibly be real creatures. The real catalyst that really hooked me was actually seeing the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek back in the mid-'70s sometime. I was really young, but it was something that took place maybe about 3 hours from where I live. I live in Texas, and that was just across the border in Arkansas. So at that point, it kind of brought a cryptid, much closer to me, much closer than, say, the Pacific Northwest or Scotland or anywhere else. So that just became something that I was fascinated in and was sort of a person who, read the books and then watched television shows and so forth. And later, as I became a professional writer, I got the idea I wanted to write a book, and it was something I'd always wanted to do, and I just thought, what's my favorite subject? And that was, the legend of Boggy Creek, and just wanted to find out more about the history and what was true about the accounts and how the movie was made, and that pretty much just launched the whole thing once the book came out and was well received.
And I think that happens for a lot of people where they hear these stories of these creatures, and it isn't until they find out, but then somebody's seen something in your neck of the woods, no pun intended, that they start to realize, oh, wait a minute, these things do hit close to home. So it's not just something that you're watching in search of and hearing about this creature that's, out in the Himalayas. This is something that there's weird and unexplained creatures happening right in our own backyards.
Yeah, true. And I think that's, what brings it, it makes it more personal. There's many people who, read about the subjects, but yeah, they're far away. I mean, I love the Yeti, but I probably wouldn't necessarily write a book about the Yeti unless I had, perhaps visited, the Himalaya mountains, or something had been a catalyst. So yeah, you're right. It will be something that once there's some personal connection, then that really sparks your desire to do more research and, perhaps write a book.
And I think it was probably, when I was younger, it was probably seeing movies on TV, the creature double feature stuff that we used to have here in the Boston area. And every UHF station had its, whether it be Friday night at midnight or Saturday afternoon, they all have the time when they would run these monster movies. And for some reason, they always seem to, show me a vampire film, show me a ghost film, show me, Frankenstein, any of this kind of stuff. But for some reason, the idea of creatures that could actually be real always terrified me more than these monsters, these werewolves and things like that I didn't really buy into. But when I see something like a Bigfoot creature or like a Boggy Creek monster, I'm like, for some reason, this just hits home. This just seems as something like you could be out there in the woods and encounter one of these creatures.
Yeah, I couldn't say it better myself. That's exactly my background on it as well. I love movie monsters and Frankenstein and everything, but yes, I knew they weren't real, and they didn't really scare me like I can remember seeing the Patterson-Gimlin film on television. I mean, that just freaked me right out. I thought, man, I grew up with my dad. He's an avid bow hunter, and, I was often in the woods, and I thought, man, if I saw that thing in the woods, I don't care if it is just walking away from me, that would just scare me to death.
And we're talking with the Patterson-Gimlin film, that's, 50 years now. And is that, I mean, if you look at some of these other stories that have come up, and I think UFOs have had kind of a same explosion over 50 years, since the Kenneth Arnold sightings, you've seen that kind of increase. But I feel like all of those things still kind of remain fringe just enough. But in the 50 years since Patterson-Gimlin film, I think a lot of people have welcomed the possibility of there being a Bigfoot, even if it's just something that they just make a joke about when they're out walking in the woods. It's become part of more of the consciousness than I think anything else.
Yeah, certainly so. It's just bigger than ever, and just an example is the show Finding Bigfoot is one of Animal Planet's most successful shows, and it's run for almost 10 years. So, that's one of the things that have made it just a household name, and it's more acceptable now to say, well, I think, I might have seen Bigfoot, or my uncle did, or people are used to that, whereas before it was, you were risking your reputation if you claimed you had seen something like this, 50 years ago. People think, hey, what are you talking about? You're nuts. But now it's in the public consciousness so much that, who knows how many people just utter the word Bigfoot in one day, and it'd be millions,
And I'm a pro wrestling fan, and for those who follow pro wrestling, there's always, and it goes a bit to boxing as well, but they always say, for some, in some people's careers, it's better to have them be the one chasing the championship than to actually win the championship. And I think the same thing is kind of true with these creatures as well. It's the chase of them. It's trying to find out if they're real and trying to prove they're real. Finding Bigfoot, I think if they ever actually find Bigfoot, that's probably going to be the end of the series, because you've kind of reached that penultimate moment. Then where do you go from there? How would that be for a researcher such as yourself in cataloging these stories? If all of a sudden, say for example, the Boggy Creek monster showed up on your front door and you were able to take a picture and catalog it and prove to the world that it was real, then does the mystery end there?
Well, it in some ways it does, but in some ways it sort of opens up other doors, because if we did prove Boggy Creek monster, perhaps it's not 7 feet tall. Perhaps it's not quite as dangerous looking. It could be 4 feet tall and a little bit, less than impressive. And you never know what the reality of that is. Or even if you did prove it, you certainly accomplished that. But for myself, I've researched other cryptids, even written other books, and there's a gamut of cryptids. And I think if one of them was proven, even if it was Bigfoot, all of a sudden people are going to go, oh, wait a minute. So, he's saying now we've proved that all these other creatures that have been, Mothman, everything else, now people are going to really get excited over, well, maybe we can prove these other ones. So I think it doesn't end cryptozoology. It may end the quest for Bigfoot, but it would, there's many more cryptids out there to be proven, I guess.
And I think that's all it takes. It takes just proving one to change people's mindset. And if you look back in history, we've actually been able to do that with, people, giant squids. People didn't think that those were real.
Coelacanth.
You see these things that we thought were mythological and then turn out to be real, and that kind of just opens the door for these other things to also kind of fall into that same category of we thought it was until finally we could prove it was.
Right, and I think that people always love mysteries. They will never, we're not going to be at a point where there's no mysteries. Everybody kind of says, oh, well, we sort of know everything, we explored the whole planet. Nonsense. There's things to be discovered, and there's always a new mystery around every corner because people love mystery. So I think, there's no point where we would have proved something and then everybody just the air goes out of the balloon. It's still going to be there.
And if you look at some of these other creatures, if you look at Bigfoot, if you look at other Yeti creatures, if you look at some of these other Mothman, things like that, you look at these stories, for a lot of people, they came to know about them through maybe a show like In Search Of, or maybe a magazine article or something. There's some sort of, I don't want to say completely nonfiction basis, but there's, some sort of an idea of there being a kernel of truth to it as it's coming out. I think a lot of people were exposed to Boggy Creek from the 1972 film. And that's how they learned about that monster. And there's got to be some pitfalls with that as well, too, for this movie to be everybody's kind of first introduction into this creature.
It creates a few misconceptions, but, luckily, and it's certain that was the introduction to the Fount monster, the Boggy Creek monster, for most people, other than the people who lived in the Texarkana, Louisiana area where it would run in the papers. Other than that, it was, unknown to anybody else except the locals. But, it's the movie, it's a horror movie, and it's also got the kind of documentary approach. And luckily that there had been so many reports that the director, Charles Pierce, really just had to follow and sort of dramatize real-life sightings. He didn't have to make up a lot of stuff, so it didn't create too much fictional add-ons. I mean, yes, he did take those sightings and make them as dramatic as possible, but really at the core of it, they're fairly accurate. And so, people, I guess from the movie, they think, Southern Sasquatch is pretty much, they're going to chase you down, they got a bad reputation, and there is some cases like that, but not all cases. But I think that as far as it goes, and after having done all the research, I was quite impressed with the movie being based so much on accurate, eyewitness reports.
Which is funny because, that was at a time when they were cranking out movies like this. They were cranking out kind of, Monster of the Week type movies. And so it's not surprising if you get one of these movies that might be based in fact, but in actuality is kind of just, somebody's fictionalized version of it. So to be able to put that much truth into it at that time when they probably didn't have to, that was probably just serving the story more than it was trying to serve anybody else that was behind the making of the film.
Yeah, that's true. And I think one advantage of it was that he actually did go into the project with the intentions of making the documentary, because it was originally called Tracking the Fount Monster. And so a lot of the early approach had been that, he was doing a documentary, which led him to, try to be accurate in the recreations and things. And, and it was like, this came out, he started working on that in 1971. It came out in 72. And it was the precursor for what you see now with In Search of and Monster Quest and all that other stuff. He was, and that's why it was so scary and resonated so well with people, because that documentary approach was, oh man, that made it so real. And, when I saw it as a kid, I remember thinking in my mind, how was this guy there when that lady saw the monster or whatever? Because I thought, the reenactments looked so scary and so real. That was because he was using, in many cases, the actual witnesses to reenact the cases. So it was very much a precursor to, In Search of and all the shows that have followed.
And what I find to be the most amazing about that, too, is that when you do that, you're giving a sense of realism and a sense of terror and actual feeling that even the best actor couldn't be able to convey, because you're getting it from the people who actually had those experiences, and you're bringing them back to it. You're bringing them back to what happened, and you're bringing them back into that moment. And I think that we've become so desensitized to that now, because we see so many of these paranormally themed TV shows where people are talking about their experiences, and they seem pretty cool and calm and collected about it, because we're used to the format. We're used to seeing how this all works. Back then, people weren't used to seeing that. So it's, it's a lot more raw than it is now.
Yeah, certainly so. And I mean, you can kind of compare it to the sequel that followed in 1977, Return to Boggy Creek. It was much more of a bit of a kid's movie or so forth, but in that one it was just a fictional story, and they used actors with just crummy Cajun accents and stuff, it just does not ring true like when you look at Legend of Boggy Creek and you hear those people's dialect and their words. There's no comparison. So yeah, it
was that one of those situations, though? I'm not familiar. I haven't seen Return to Boggy Creek, and I haven't seen Legend of Boggy Creek in a long, long time. But was that one of those situations where it was this script was kind of out there for a monster movie, and the Falk monster became popular through the other movies, so they kind of just married the two ideas together?
No, it was mainly that the Legend of Boggy Creek had done so well. Pierce made it for $160,000, and by within 4 or 5 years, the thing had made millions, 20 million by then, and 25 million eventually. But studios kept coming to him asking to do a sequel, and he's like, no. I did that, and I've moved on, because he was making other movies that were quite good. He knew that was gold, and he didn't want to tamper with it. So it was just something where the studio somehow bought the rights and said, we're going to go make our own sequel, and Pierce didn't want to have anything to do with it as far as directing. So I suppose he sold them the rights to use that name, but it's nothing like what Pierce did.
And we have a question from our chat room on SpookySouthCoast.com. Somebody wants to know, a pseudonym wants to know, is this a case where, do you think that this story would have kind of been lost to history? Obviously people such as yourself who study this, it would be something that comes up, but would it stay in the pop culture lexicon and in the minds of people had it not been for that film?
Definitely not. No, that film made that case extremely famous. And in fact, my new book called Beyond Boggy Creek in Search of the Southern Sasquatch, the basic premise of that is that the Legend of Boggy Creek is so famous because it had a movie associated with it. But in fact, there is so many of those kind of similar reports all over the Deep South, and many of them just as interesting and scary as the Boggy Creek, that my book covers all those other cases. But you can tell that these were they just didn't have a movie, and nobody but the locals even knew about them. So yeah, it's for certain that if that movie wasn't made, it would just be a handful of newspaper reports, and all the rest would be knowledge of the locals.
And we have just about 5 minutes left in this hour. Then we'll have to take a break from the news. When we come back on the other side, I want to get more into what the actual Boggy Creek story is, what the truth is in comparison to the film. And as you said, it's pretty true, but I'm sure there's some little minor details we can discuss. And also we'll talk about the new book, Beyond Boggy Creek, as well. But I think that, getting to the idea of these movies spreading the word, it is a double-edged sword because, as we mentioned at the beginning, sometimes these movies can kind of foster false impressions of it. But also, as we've learned with especially the, like the Small Town Monsters films and documentary films like that the more these are put out there, the more sightings come in. And the more that we start to realize that, it's not just a handful of people that are experiencing these stories are bigger than they are. Do you feel, though, that also as yourself as somebody who's researching these stories and trying to get to the kernels of truth behind a lot of them, does this mass explosion that we've had lately of Bigfoot-related media, does that really kind of muddy the waters a little bit, too, to decide what is real and what is just people trying to latch on to the next big phenomenon?
Somewhat, yeah. There is that problem. Yeah, so there's been an advantage because people are more willing to talk about it. But yeah, there is more cases where I think people will interpret a shadow or something, that would normally be, written off as, oh wait, I saw Bigfoot. It develops into a story. But the worst case I see is that it has inspired so many researchers to go out there, and I think these researchers feel, if they go out for a weekend, they need to have some reports. And so the place where I feel like there's just so much confusing stuff is coming from people who are in the woods looking for Bigfoot. But if you're still out there interviewing what I call the civilians, people who don't want to see Bigfoot, don't think about it, don't care, those reports still, have credibility, and those are the ones that I kind of go for myself. So I see that they're a little more willing to talk, but hopefully hasn't affected, your average person too much.
And I know that, the cryptid community, those who research these creatures, it's a very tight community, but there's also a lot of, there's some politicking in it as well. And I can tell you that one thing that I've noticed, see, we have hundreds of episodes up online and on YouTube of our show. And the one every week that when I get an alert that says that somebody's commenting on one of our YouTube videos, there's hardly a week that goes by that somebody doesn't comment on the Tom Biscardi episode where he came on and tried to defend the whole hoax that happened. So it just goes to show that this is something that people are passionate about, that people are following along with it. So even this episode that we did like 3, 4, or 5 years ago, whatever it was, is still riling people up. It shows that this research is something that people take very seriously. It's, as ghost researchers, I know that somebody can tell me they felt a cold spot, that they've heard a voice, that this and that, and that might be enough for us to go and research. But when it comes to these creatures, it takes a little bit more to convince somebody that something's going on. So I can understand why there's a lot of protection for what it is that you do, because you don't want to get lumped into a lot of these hoaxes and a lot of these people who are just out there investigating every little knock that they hear in the woods.
Yeah, you've got to be careful. And, I come at it as somewhat of an investigative journalist, so I try to, understand that people are going to be skeptical. So if I say I've been into the woods and seen Bigfoot 30 times, yet, the guy over here has been hunting, is the 70-year-old guy that's been hunting for his entire life, had 0 encounters or 1, something's off about that. So, I think the most important thing is not interpret things too much. Be sure that it's a legitimate, the best of the best. We need to come forward with what's the best and not, raise red flags, by going to state parks where there's people swimming in the lake and things and say they saw Bigfoot, standing there. It's just got to ring true. So, it begs to be balanced and try to present the best case so that people who are skeptical, real scientists and things like that, don't think it's too much fantasy.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a break for the news. When we come back on the other side, we'll be joined more with our guest, Lyle Blackburn. We'll also take your calls, 508-996-0500, 877-996-1420. You can also jump into the chat room on SpookySouthCoast.com or download our free app for Android and iPhone, and you'll be able to get into the chat room there as well and watch the show as you're listening. So we'll take a break. We'll be back with more Spooky South Coast in just a bit.